The council, to its credit, is doing a lot of work around this, and the government's supporting them with money. So we had £192,000 specifically for Colchester last year, over £200,000 this year, and that's supporting outreach projects. And we're also trialling a relatively new programme, which is very popular in Scandinavia, which is Housing First. So we're piloting some micro Housing First projects here in Colchester too. The council at the moment is in the process of building an additional 16 homes specifically for accommodation for those that are homeless. We are also, we've lifted the cap, so we are able to start building more council homes as well, so that's a good thing. I find I've just written an article which will be in the Colchester Gazette very soon on social housing and why I think we as a government need to invest far more in building social housing. And we're building only a fraction of what we have historically built. Personally, I would like to see us as a government start to look at getting it back into the market of building homes ourselves and building far more. And I think we need to be building them in the tens of thousands in terms of council houses, ideally even more. We're only building a fraction of that at the moment. I think the government's doing the right thing now, so they're investing around £1.2 billion a year into tackling homelessness. We've got the Housing First pilot, so that's the direction of travel that we're moving in, and they are funding rough sleeping or projects to tackle rough sleeping in towns where there's a higher prevalence of rough sleeping, like for example in Colchester. So, do I want them to go much further? Yes, of course I do, and building social houses or social homes is part of that. We've got the piece now with the Homelessness Reduction Act around. I think we will now do far better at preventing people becoming homeless, but we still have massive issues around those that are rough sleeping. For example, in London and our big cities where we see the highest prevalence of rough sleeping, around 50% of all those that are sleeping rough are non-British nationals. So we need to find a solution to that, and the answers to that aren't particularly easy. But it's one of those situations that we can't just ignore.
And do you think after Brexit something will change regarding this issue?
So, I don't know if it's necessarily Brexit will change. There are all sorts of reasons why there are, why people are sleeping rough on our streets in London in particular that are not non-UK nationals. And in some parts it's even things like shame, that somebody has come from, for example, Eastern Europe to build a new life in the UK, and they don't want to go home and say it hasn't worked. Yeah. So they will stay here and hope that things will get better. There are also people that are sleeping rough but still working, for example. So I think the one thing you realise when you start working on homelessness, in particular rough sleeping, there is no one fix or solution that works for everybody, and every single case is unique. When I mention things like mental health and drug addiction and alcohol, yes, there's a higher prevalence, but there's no certainty that everyone will be affected by those issues. Each individual individual person will have very complex needs of their own, and that's why actually, things like the new programme, accepting for the first time that homelessness is actually a health issue, for example, which the government has done recently, is really important. They've just put in the recent NHS announcements, put £30 million a year into that. So now you will see outreach teams going out with mental health workers. That's a massive change, and it's going to be really, really helpful and beneficial in terms of helping to start to address some of those complex needs and actually engage with people and build trust.